First encounter, beneath the rainbow. Have you ever looked at a stranger as if you'd known them your entire life? I'm Adrian. That day is etched in my memory forever. The day when rainbow flags blended with the sky, wine swirled in glasses, and the courtyard of the French Cultural Center buzzed with a captivating energy. Pride Week was in full swing, alive with vibrant melodies and laughter, echoing through animated conversations. That day, after a film screening, a group had gathered in the side garden, sipping wine and sharing stories. Amid the crowd, my eyes found her, Harper. Her long curly hair framed her face, and her dark red lipstick gleamed against the evening light. She held a glass of wine, speaking animatedly, her expressions enchanting those around her. Without even hearing her voice, I felt drawn to her allure. I hesitated for a moment. Approaching people wasn't my strong suit, but something pushed me forward. Before I knew it, I was walking toward the group she was in. Am I late for the movie, or just in time? I asked, with a faint smile. She looked up at me, her big, deep eyes filled with stories untold. She smiled softly. Right on time. Got your wine? And just like that, I found myself blending into Harper's circle. As the conversations flowed, I felt her gaze on me, each glance making my heartbeat quicken. As we talked, she began sharing little details about her life. I love taking photographs, she said. I believe everyone has a story written in the lines of their eyes. That night, we only exchanged a few words, but every moment with her seemed to make the world sharper, clearer. Harper's presence and voice turned the evening into something extraordinary. Over the next few days, we bumped into each other at other events. Post-screening coffee chats, moments of quiet while listening to music, side by side. Each time I felt the unique energy she carried grow stronger around me. And then came the Pride March. Amid the crowd, I saw her again. She held a banner, her face shining with determination and joy. Once more, I felt that familiar spark ignite in my chest. Eye to eye amid chaos. The sky was as vibrant and bold as the flags carried in the march. The crowd's energy flowed through the streets like a river, unstoppable and alive. Harper and I stood side by side. She looked both proud and slightly uneasy. Adrian, she said softly, being here, it feels like saying yes to myself all over again. As I looked at her, I felt the weight of her words. I understood how much this moment meant to her, because it meant the same to me. But those serene moments shattered abruptly. Something shifted. The sting in my eyes hit me before I realized what was happening. Smoke began to spread through the streets, and people rushed past, colliding with each other in panic. When I lost sight of Harper, it wasn't fear that overtook me. It was a sudden, urgent panic. Harper! I shouted, pushing through the crowd. Finally, I found her on the ground, her hands covering her face as she struggled to breathe. I dropped to my knees beside her. Can you hear me? I asked, but she couldn't respond. Her hands stayed pressed over her eyes, and the irritation and burning kept her from opening them. I dug into my bag, pressing a lemon into her hands. Use this. It'll help your eyes, I said. Then I poured a bit of milk onto her face, trying to soothe the irritation. Harper nodded faintly, but her eyes remained half closed. I wasn't in great shape either. My breathing was tight and my chest felt heavy. I quickly pulled out my asthma inhaler and took a dose, the relief immediate but fleeting. You, Harper whispered, her voice raspy. Are you okay? I paused to steady my breath, then managed a small smile. I should be asking you that, Harper. I helped her to her feet, and together we made our way to a quieter corner. We sat on the steps of an alley, away from the chaos. Harper's breathing slowed, but her face still showed traces of pain mixed with gratitude. How did you even think to help like that? She asked, wiping her eyes carefully. I shrugged. Isn't that how it's been since we met? We make sure the other's okay. Harper let out a soft laugh. Maybe that's why we're here. In that moment, a quiet sense of safety settled over us. The noise and turmoil of the crowd were left behind. And in that small alley, we found a refuge that felt like it belonged only to us. Wounds and silence. As we walked through Taksim's narrow streets, I held Harper's arm tightly. Her eyes were still irritated, but she was feeling better. Escaping the chaos of the main streets, we made our way toward Fundikla's shore. Both of us tried to take deep breaths, but the weight of the night clung heavily to our minds. "Have you heard from anyone?" I asked Harper. She pulled out her phone, her trembling hands scrolling through a message. Her eyes glistened for a moment before she looked away. "A group of people attacked," she said slowly, her voice a strange mix of frustration and sorrow. "They've been taken to the hospital." "Who?" I asked, my voice tight with concern. Harper noticed the tension and paused. "Chris," she finally said, her voice barely a whisper. When we reached the hospital, the waiting room was steeped in silence. Chris's family was there. Harper slumped into the chair next to me as the woman across from us started speaking angrily. "This is your fault!" she hissed under her breath. "He could have had a normal life, but now—" She trailed off, her eyes dropping to the floor. "Christine!" she finally said, but that name sounded like a scream echoing through the room. Harper froze, her gaze fixed downward, fists clenched tightly at her sides. At that moment, I felt the full weight of Chris's chosen name, its importance, and how his family refused to acknowledge it. This was his battle, and they still refused to see it. A nurse came by to update the family. Chris had fractured ribs and was struggling to breathe. Harper's eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. Instead, she took a deep breath and stood up. "Take care," she said firmly, her voice strong but fragile. It was a farewell. We both knew there was no point in staying longer, no words that could make a difference. As we stepped out of the hospital, I tried to decipher the blank expression on Harper's face. "We can't help them," she finally said. "It feels like our hands are tied." "Sometimes change takes time," I whispered, but my voice trembled. I wasn't sure how true those words really were. As we walked toward the starlit shore, Harper's hands felt ice cold. In that moment, I realized that the only way forward was by holding on to each other. Shadows of the gray streets. As the night deepened, the streets grew quieter, but the weight of the stairs on us only intensified. The rainbow flag in Harper's hand was dirtied. One corner was torn, but its colors still held their defiance. A few passers-by whispered as they walked past, "Are they women or men?" One sneered mockingly. Harper flinched slightly but said nothing. I stayed silent too. It was as if our silence had become our armor. "Let's talk about something else," Harper said suddenly. Her voice sounded like someone trying to pull themselves back together. "Anything you want," I replied, though I felt empty inside, as if all my words were trapped in a gray void. When we finally reached home, I unlocked the door, and we stepped inside. Harper folded the rainbow flag and placed it on the table. I went to the kitchen and grabbed 2 beers. "Can we forget tonight?" Harper asked, twisting the cap off her bottle. "Maybe we can't forget," I said honestly, "but we can imagine something else." That night, we lay side by side on the rug in the living room, staring at the ceiling. Harper's breathing was deep and steady. "What color are your dreams?" I asked, breaking the silence with a quiet curiosity. She paused for a moment before answering. "Blue, like an endless sky." "Mine are green," I said, "like fresh sprouts. But right now, we're under a gray cloud." Harper turned her head slightly, squinting at me. "Gray can merge with blue," she said, "and after the storm, it becomes a rainbow." We lay there quietly for a long time. As my eyes grew heavy, I heard Harper whisper, "One day, we'll paint this world with our own colors." In that moment, something shifted inside me. I realized that even gray, in its quiet resilience, could hold the promise of hope. Do you believe that we can change the world with the power of our colors?